Hello and welcome to another episode of Attacking Third, a CBS Sports soccer podcast. I'm Sandra Herrera, lead NWSL writer for CBS Sports. Joined today, as always, by my colleague and co-host Lisa Roman, broadcaster and analyst for CBS Sports. On today's show, we have an investigations results fallout over the full investigative report from Sally Yates. Before we get into everything, go ahead and watch all of our Attacking Third episodes, previews, recaps, interviews, and more on YouTube. Subscribe to our page to get notified whenever we go live at youtube.com/attacking third. We, of course, are starting off this morning with an update to reactions and fallout since the Sally Yates investigative report into sexual misconduct and abuse into women's professional soccer. That report was released over a week ago. Monday, I believe the 3rd, it dropped. And since then, it's been a very intense 8 or 9 days or so. And there have since been reactions and additional updates and statements, stemming from the full report that was released last Monday. Welcome to everybody joining us this morning in the chat. We appreciate you being here with us as always. Lisa, it's constant at this point. I just feel like there's always something else for us to talk about regarding this.
Yeah, there is. And we knew that was going to happen, right? It's been a week and a half, a week and 3 days since the Yates investigation initially dropped. And with all of the information that was in there, really exposing so many people that were still involved in the NWSL, we knew that there was going to be a couple other shoes that had to drop and statements to be made from players. And there has been fallout, some of it in pretty quick succession, but then some others waiting a week, waiting 8 days, 9 days. And because of that, we wanted to jump back on here and chat with everyone about it and give everyone an update on it. And things will continue to happen, right? There will be more, I'm going to say fallout that continues to come from this investigation results, whether it's to protect, to implement new laws, or to remove people from positions that they are currently in, that they shouldn't be in.
Yeah, absolutely. We've been doing, like I said, it feels like an episode every day, nearly about this. For folks who are looking to stay updated with the latest on all of the fallout and reaction, we've done a number of episodes. Again, plug the YouTube. Please go ahead and go. You can go ahead and find the videos that we've done already. You can catch up via your preferred streaming method of listening to podcasts, and get caught up on some of our reactions to the things that have already dropped. Some of the things that we have reacted to already are statements and actionable items coming out of the Portland Thorns FC organization and the Chicago Red Stars organization as well. You can go get caught up on those things. But this episode is also going to include an additional update, regarding Portland Thorns out of the U.S. soccer investigation update. So, just in terms of this update, the series of events that have followed the release of the Yates investigation, that really sort of centered and highlighted 3 specific franchises within that one report: Portland Thorns, Chicago Red Stars, and Racing Louisville. Portland Thorns have released a number of statements, including some actionable items. The most recent Portland statement is from primary owner Merritt Paulson. He has released a statement saying that he will be stepping down as CEO of both the Portland Timbers and Thorns franchises. Within the statement, saying, looking ahead, our organization is at a crossroads and the future is not necessarily a clear path. No matter what happens, ensuring the long-term health and success of the Portland Thorns is critical to me, as I know it is for our players and the community. He went on to also issue apologies within this statement, saying, I'm holding myself accountable for not doing enough. I owe Sinead Fairley, Mana Shim, the Thorns players, and the NWSL my tireless effort to actually make sure what happened in 2015 never happens again. I apologize to our players, the organization, and the Portland community for the mistakes that we made, including not being publicly transparent about Paul Riley's termination. Our organization's failures and mistakes were ultimately my responsibility and my responsibility alone.
Yeah, I think this statement coming on Monday the 10th, right? So exactly 1 week after the Yates investigation dropped, and this it was kind of like the trickle effect of like everything that was happening at Portland, and we talked about this, Sandra, you and I, that there are owners within leagues that you cannot force them to sell. There's nothing written about that yet that forces someone to sell. But so this was really what needed to happen with Merritt Paulson, is that he needed to step away, and he did that earlier. But now stepping away from being CEO. He had been there with the organization, actually like really involved, his family really involved with the MLS and with the Thorns and the Timbers organization. He was an owner and operator of Portland organization since 2017, and the Thorns were founded in 2012. But how this connects is that in the Yates report, it was very explicit in saying that Merritt Paulson was the owner of the Thorns while Riley was there. Paulson was aware of the investigation in 2015 with the Thorns, and he helped Riley, and he fired Riley for cause. But then Paulson was also the same one that put out the tweet from Portland saying, "We're going our separate ways. Best of luck to Riley." Then, because that investigation was never made clear to the public, never made known to anyone else, Riley was then able to go on and coach for another 6 years in the NWSL. He went on to Western New York Flash and then ultimately got moved to North Carolina. Um, there was no transparency from Paulson about why Riley was fired. And Paulson failed to tell the truth in this situation. He minimized Riley's actions, and he didn't discourage North Carolina Courage from hiring Paul Riley. And also in the Yates investigation reports, it said that the Thorns interfered with access to certain witnesses, relevant witnesses for the investigation, and raised suspicious legal arguments in an attempt to impede our use of relevant documents. So not only did Merritt Paulson help cover up what Riley did in 2015 and what was reported by the players of the Thorns then, but also during this investigation over the last year, not cooperating with Sally Yates and the investigation team to help uncover what was happening, because he knew what he did. He knew he shouldn't have done that. Oh, it's clearly
I
I'm
mean,
getting fired up about
at the
this.
time, at the time, did they? I just am like, it's
At the time, maybe not, but as the investigation has happened, after the Meg Linehan Athletic article comes out and
yeah,
Merritt Paulson's name is all over it, and then the NWSL joint PA and league investigation launches, and then the independent Yates investigation
yeah.
launches. Paulson knew. He knew,
And
"Oh,
I
crap,
just say
they're
like,
coming to me." He
did they,
did.
in the sense where it's like, is this is just like normal, like this was just like normal reaction
Oh,
and behavior.
completely.
um it was just accepted normal protocol in the minds of certain men, specific men in executive positions, to just sort of receive this information and then wish this other person who committed tons of misconduct, wish them well. Just go ahead and wish them well in their next endeavors.
And when they're going to get hired by a new organization, a new club, a new team, say, "Yeah, he's gonna be a great coach."
Yeah, it's been I believe there's been about three updates, like three statements or updates coming out of Portland, also specifically from Paulson. There have been some in each one. There has been like some sort of actionable item, and recent uh, this most recent statement and announcement is coming again just after last Tuesday, when Paulson wanted to say it was the saddest day in his life. He was filled with sorrow for reading all of the news coming out, and within that statement, saying that he was going to step back from day to day things and Thorne's decision making. That president of soccer and president of business Gavin Wilkinson and Mike Gulab would also step away from decision making roles with the Thorns, and that was almost like it was phase one to sort of perhaps test the public waters or reactions
Yeah.
to that. And then you have just a day later that Wilkinson and Golub actually, no, here's a new statement. These two people have been removed from their positions completely, their roles terminated within the franchises completely, right? So no more Wilkinson and no more Golub, right? And then sort of highlighting who will be running day-to-day things. The Thorns General Counsel Heather Davis is currently interim president and CEO. She went on to appoint Sarah Keene as interim COO. The two of them, based on this most recent announcement that Paulson intends to step away as CEO, that the two of them will sort of, lead combined efforts to perhaps, do a global search for a new CEO of the Thorns and Timbers. So nothing within these prior statements, and of course this most recent statement, which each of them highlighting just one more step back, one more step back, one more step back. None of them actually, saying within them that there's going to be intent to disinvest or completely move or remove oneself from, ownership of the franchises. So I think in terms of the public reaction to this, fan reaction, supporter reaction, right? People's reactions on the good old internet, that folks are looking for that they're looking for that to be the next step, like the actual conversation around disinvestment. So there's also been reaction to, Heather Davis being appointed in this role because of the things that you highlighted right now, Lisa, about within the Yates report, how the Thorns were not 100% compliant with the investigation and open with wanting to participate with that. And folks sort of highlighting, well, is this the same general counsel that advised to not be participating within the Yates report? So it's like everything that has been coming out over the last 8 to 9 days. It's an absolute mixed bag of reactions to all of this.
Completely. And the lack of transparency is still entirely evident, because as you just talked about, how it was like a slow release of like, wow, I'm heartbroken. Okay, we're going to step away from like having our hand in the pot here to, okay, I'm actually going to step away from CEO. Like it's crazy to watch this unfold, but this is what the players wanted, right? As soon as the Yates report dropped, we saw reactions from fans, from supporters group, from sponsorships that we reported on earlier this week saying, hey, we're going to reallocate our funds, not giving them to you, the individual clubs, but instead reallocating them to the Players Fund and the National Emergency Trust for the NWSL PA. And players speaking out about this. I mean, Megan Rapinoe saying, direct quote, I don't think Merritt Paulson is fit to be the owner of that team, the Portland Thorns. Becky Sauerbrunn, 2 U.S. internationals, and Becky Sauerbrunn, a player with Portland, saying, quote, it's my opinion that every owner and executive of and U.S. soccer official who have repeatedly failed the players and failed to protect the players, who have hidden behind legalities and have not participated fully in these investigations should be gone. And Megan Rapinoe's statement, a little bit more direct, saying Merritt Paulson's name explicitly, but still Sauerbrunn saying that if you didn't participate fully in these investigations, you should be gone. And that's a finger point at someone like Merritt Paulson. So this is what the players wanted. This is what they were calling to action for. There's still more to be done, though, because Arnim Whistler, the owner of Chicago, and the money and statements in this, but this is the players' voices are being heard. That's what I'm getting from this to some extent. And at least it's being talked about in the media.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's some of this common thread that we've talked about in some of these statements, whether it's been from franchises directly, or within some of the collective statements that we've seen from players, including the NWSL Players Association, that there has been this constant mention of the joint investigation that is still to come between the league and the NWSL Players Association. So that's something I think that folks are also still waiting on. I would imagine that that's not going to be coming out as NWSL playoffs are happening. I would imagine that we have to anticipate that, post NWSL calendar year. But it's important to highlight those things, the statements of the players. I mean, and these are players who were just in Europe. These are
Yeah.
statements out of an international window where they
Yep.
were getting ready to play two of the biggest programs in the world. And it's not just, Sauerbrunn or Rapinoe, players who are veteran players who have been around for a very long time saying these things. There was comment from, Lindsay Horan, who's with Lyon right now, and the difficulties of processing that type of news, knowing that she, had worn a Thorns jersey for so long. She is someone on a contract with intent to return back to that franchise. That it was all very difficult to process. Crystal Dunn as well, saying that it was very difficult to find joy, right, in the jersey and in the game right now. And you got to listen when players speak up. I don't think if we've learned nothing else over the last year or so, that's, I think, one of the main things that people are sort of walking away with. And
Mm-hmm.
In terms of another step back, of the already two steps back that Paulson has sort of taken over the last week or so. I think for this one, this sort of feels like the biggest of those steps, right?
Right.
Removing oneself as CEO of not just, Thorns related, soccer related things, but of both franchises. So no longer CEO, but still the owner. On the MLS side of things, still has long time. It has a long history of governance with the MLS board of governors. Is a member of the product strategy committee, the on-field
It's
production, and MLS.
family governance with the Paulsons, right? His dad was involved in MLS governance, and then him being involved. There's a lot of
Yeah.
ties there.
So it just sort of feels like even with this most recent statement, with this most recent announcement that has some actionable things within it, it just sort of feels like this is not that final step, so to speak. That there will ultimately be some more things down the pipeline to come. But again, this is just the latest in terms of what's been coming out in terms of reaction and fallout from the Yates investigative report. But that's not it. That's not the only franchise that had some news this week. We have to speak on Orlando Pride and news out of that franchise as well. And we're going to talk about that with you all right after a quick break.
It's time to start a new chapter.
Bundle Paramount Plus with Showtime.
Now show me what you can do.
Stream it all in one place for just $7.99 per month.
Oh, hello world.
Your time starts now. Oh, what a shot! Don't forget to land on your feet.
Stream Paramount Plus with Showtime. Just $7.99 per month.
Okay, we're back to talk about the continued follow and reaction from the Yates report that dropped last week on Monday, October. It's like starting a new week a little bit, Lisa. When we sort of were collecting ourselves and sort of content planning for this week, I think somewhere in the back of our minds, we said that we were probably going to have to hold some time and some space to be able to talk about all of these things. And here we are, because just yesterday, or the other day, Monday, October the 10th, kicking off a new week of reaction. Late in the afternoon, the league and Orlando Pride issued an update regarding the investigation into allegations of misconduct within the Orlando Pride organization regarding now former head coach Amanda Cromwell, first assistant coach Sam Greene, and goalkeeping coach Elaine Rice. And I remember seeing this headline, Lisa, and seeing it drop, and curious about it, because this franchise in this particular situation was not something that was mentioned specifically in the Yates report. And I wasn't too sure if there was going to be an update that presented itself right now, essentially in the week leading up to what is NWSL postseason.
Yeah, with Orlando not in the postseason, maybe that changes things a little bit. But this the investigation at Orlando Pride being launched early last year within the NWSL and the NWSLPA, which that joint investigation launched in October of 2021. And those results have not been made public yet, but expected to be by the end of the year. And even throughout the Yates report, that was also happening the Yates investigation happening alongside the NWSL and PA joint investigation. There was a lot of response from the Yates investigation of clubs, of individuals saying, okay, we're going to wait until the joint investigation between the league and the Players Association comes out. And this is something from Orlando Pride and the joint investigation between the league and the PA that is being released now because it was crucial for them to get it out because their contracts were terminated. They were put on administrative leave earlier this year, a few months ago, but based on the results of the investigation, Amanda Cromwell, Sam Greene, their contracts were terminated by the NWSL because of misconduct and allegations of misconduct at Orlando Pride during the time that Amanda Cromwell was there. Now, she was only appointed head coach at Orlando last December.
Yep.
And coming from UCLA, the collegiate game where she was for years, and bringing over a number of staff from her time at UCLA, including Sam Greene as her first assistant. But this is the first time that the NWSL has actually terminated a coaching contract. And because of that, like hired in 2021, hiring Greene as well, and their partnership going back to the UCLA days, which is like a whole other tangent I could get off on, like what was happening to these young collegiate players while she was there. But allegations of verbal abuse, of improper favoritism towards players, retaliation towards players, all investigated by the league and the PA in the joint investigation.
It's important, I think, to contextualize that, right? I that was my first reaction in terms of sort of reading this update from the league. Not only just the timing of it, that we're getting one, just a week after the Yates report. I think it's a interesting point that you make that you bring up about, hey, Orlando's actually, their season is done, so their business that has concluded could actually be spoken about, maybe perhaps, despite some other teams entering the postseason. But I think important context to note that, because that was my first reaction, not reading the report saying that the league has terminated the coaching contracts of Cromwell and Greene. I was like, this is a first. This is a first for this league. And, that's obviously what was done throughout the investigation found enough or was weighted enough in the league's opinion that it warranted a termination, a separation of contracts for these coaches.
An immediate termination, right? An immediate termination, not waiting for the results of these investigations, but hey, get it done now as soon as we can.
Yeah, absolutely. And within it, essentially kind of having a ban on these particular individuals in terms of having a coaching future within NWSL. That's ultimately what these results mean in terms of providing additional context for folks who might not be aware of the situation that was going on in Orlando. That was something else that I appreciated out of the league's release, that compared to some other things in the past, there was context, there was some transparency within this release. It wasn't just some small 5 to 7 sentence graph that said this happened, it's done, and here's what we're doing, goodbye. It's they gave a timeline of events. They provided some background, how the joint investigation team has been working on their own investigations also since October 21, around the same timeline as the Yates investigation was commissioned as well. Also searching into allegations of workplace misconduct towards NWSL players by individuals in position of power, along with investigating systematic issues in the league. and that in March of 2022, so we're talking just months after Cromwell was hired with the team in December of 2021.
And only 2 months after the season started, or preseason, and then the start
Very
of Challenge Cup.
early. Yeah, very early. You're already talking the league saying in the statement that the investigative team received allegations of verbal abuse and improper favoritism towards players of Orlando Pride by then head coach Amanda Cromwell, and additional allegations about favoritism from first assistant head coach Sam Greene. And within those early results, that they saw that some of those allegations were substantiated, and because of that, at the conclusion, they were given written warnings at the time, and Cromwell was told that she had to participate in leadership training. So there's a timeline of events in which then comes May 2022. The investigative team received reports that Cromwell and Greene were engaging in retaliatory conduct towards players who they believed had initiated, participated in, and were supportive of that investigation in March. And it was through then into June that this coaching staff found themselves that they were subject to various forms of misconduct, and then through an additional third-party investigator investigating more things, that Cromwell and Greene, this is in mid-season here, where they were placed on official administrative leave. So based on the timeline of events that occurred, the investigations that were done, what it sounds like between March of 2022 and June till now, and in October, that they terminated their contracts effective immediately. And it really did. I was kind of like, I don't know what I was expecting out of the update, but seeing it drop, seeing it have a timeline of events, seeing it have some additional context out of everything. It really did just sort of, I'll say it surprised me a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. I think it surprised me a little bit too, kind of how quickly the initial reports were happening as you timeline that in March and then in June, and then as things happened. And we saw, Sandra, if you remember, throughout the middle of the NWSL season this summer, between June and July, there were a number of players that left Orlando Pride, and whether they were waived or whether they were traded. It started with Amy Turner, right? The Pride released her from her contract June 17th. And then Sydney Leroux was traded June 29th to Angel City FC from Orlando Pride. And then Ungar James, Haas James, was left, parted ways with Orlando Pride in July 28th. So this was all while things were happening at Orlando Pride, and as this investigation was undergoing. And I think one of the important parts of the context to understand is that these certain players made unnamed players made reports to the league and to the club in March about this, and then they received improper favoritism, and then there was retaliation against those players until the next report again in May came out, and then at May to October, when these contracts were terminated ultimately by the league, which of course has never been done, as we've talked about that. But Pride owner, chairman Mark Wilk releasing a statement apologizing to the players after the news dropped of Cromwell, releasing a statement saying that he apologizes to the players, highlighting next steps about hiring a new coaching staff, because that's something that needs to be understood, and like that needs to happen next, because it's now the off season for Orlando, and if the club wants to keep going, they need to continue to do that. There's honestly like so many more steps that need to happen, and a lot of questions coming out around this. But it was also found out that this joint investigation also involving the goalkeeper coach, Reese, and not fully cooperating with the investigation, and saying that going to the players and saying, hey, can you give favorable information to the investigators about this? So pretty interesting kind of how this all unraveled, and how many different people are involved in this, because the trickle down effects, and then asking the players to give favorable information, like Oh, I can't.
I think just sort of looking at the timeline of information that was presented, and then again, I think you bring up, you know, a a very good point in there's that mid-season block for this Orlando Pride team, bringing up certain movement of players, and it's um it's really sad. It's really sad um to sort of, have the information in front of you and sort of, see it, and then also to see, like, the reaction coming out of it. Like there's like you mentioned, this the statement from, from owner and chairman, Mark Wilk, which, issued, some next steps, which were ultimately, just the recommendations and the suggestions of the league, just reiterating that, the implementation of, retaliatory
Yeah.
training will be presented to coaching staff, to front office staff, to everyone, involved in the franchise, which was a recommendation from, the investigators in the league. And so, seeing that, echoing those things, putting a statement, issuing an apology. Cromwell, tweeting out a statement, in her opinion, saying that she felt the investigations lacked transparency, that they lacked professionalism and thoroughness, um, and a whole bunch of stuff in between. And she closed this statement by saying that she's going to be reviewing her legal options. Which for me, reading that, just, perceived to me that she's trying to figure out a way to sue somebody. And that's unfortunate, that that's the reaction after, players have come forth with some of these allegations. Sydney LaRue, one of the former players of Orlando Pride, who was a player that was traded to Los Angeles, a franchise where she seems to be, at peace and very happy to be with now, stating reaction of her own out of this update, saying, hounding players to go to the investigative team and tell them that players who raised concerns were liars and bullies. And if this is a player who's been with the franchise for some time and is reacting to not just, the update from the league, the discipline from the league, but obviously the statements from, the chairman and the former head coach, I can't imagine that was an environment in which players felt that they could excel in and thrive in.
Yeah, and honestly, that's heartbreaking. But the fact that LaRue is using her platform of social media to speak out and talk about this, pretty blatantly, I think says a lot about how affected she was in this situation, or how close she is to her teammates that were affected, and how much she wants this to stop and wants there to be an end to this, because LaRue is no longer with Orlando Pride. Like, she's with Angel City. She's at what seems to be a great club. And I just think it says a lot that she is continuously speaking out and up about this. But there will be more to come from this situation. As Cromwell says, she's going to review her legal options, like whatever that means and what comes from that. There will be more from the NWSL and PA joint investigation. Those results hoping to come by the end of this year, to have more answers about a lot of things.
Yeah, it just sort of feels like this is not going to be the last episode that we have regarding some of the, reaction and fallout to everything, quite frankly. I mean, part of Orlando's, the update out of Orlando, is contributed to, the Yates investigation as well. And it kind of sheds a very small light for now that joint investigation is doing its job and that it's working. The joint investigation between the NWSL Players Union and the league continued to sort of maintain and do their diligence around the allegations that were brought to them. And I think it just, again, I think it just sheds a small light, and maybe it opens a window into, how they're taking this very seriously with the joint investigation team. Yeah, absolutely. So that's it for today in terms of the updates regarding last week and now apparently heading into this week. We want to thank everybody as always for joining us. These topics are never easy to talk about or discuss or chat with, so we appreciate everyone coming on in and joining us in the live. Thank you all. Download, follow, and listen to us anywhere you get your podcasts: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts. You can leave us a 5-star rating and review. It really helps us out here at the show. You can watch us too. Subscribe to us on YouTube to know whenever we'll go live. And we'll be back with more coverage. The NWSL playoffs kick off this weekend. We have a lot of good things in the works for you all, highlighting the players heading into the quarterfinals. Stay tuned. For Sandra Herrera and Lisa Roman, this was Attacking Third.